And then the second question was, who empowers the people? And that's another misunderstanding, because the people have the power already. All you can do is disempower them. And that's what we're trying to avoid. That's what we're working as change facilitators. We should be working to stop that from happening. Yeah. And a good way, or one way of doing it, is in your own mental discipline as a change facilitator to make that switch, to keep making that switch. And it's really good if you are affected by change as well as facilitating change for someone else. Then it's not just this thing, we are doing it to you. That's what I'm always fighting against when I work with managers or when I work with organizations.
And I would like to introduce you to our speaker, Susanne Bergstaller. So without any more talk from me, welcome, Susanne, and we will look forward to hearing from you. Welcome.
I've been working in organizational development, organizational change for the last 20 years, and I was always busy with client work. So I didn't do much teaching, or I didn't do any teaching about it. And then as the years went on, I realized that I can only work with 2 organizations at a time. They're doing a big change project. And I thought, okay, so much change is needed. I need to, maybe some of the things that I discovered, that I learned, I had to invent myself. And I wish somebody had told me 15 years ago how to do things more efficiently. And solution focus helped me an awful lot in order to become more impactful. So I decided some time ago, maybe last year, to do a little bit more teaching. And this is part of my mission today, to tell you about what I learned to make organizational change processes faster, more fluid, and also more fun for the practitioners and for the change agents, as well as for the people. Some of you may know that I use a change model that I developed myself, and I've visualized it in the shape of a wheel. And some of you may have been to a workshop where I introduced the whole model, or given an overview. What we're doing today is we're going to dive into what I think is the most central part of a change process. And here in the middle, and I'm going to post this, and you find it also on my website, but here in the middle you see empowering people. And there's this big wheel, and in the big wheel, at every point, at every one of the 5 points, there's a small wheel. And today we're going to dive into this aspect of the change process. What are your most urgent questions? What is your most urgent question today regarding this topic? Empowering people for change. And I would like to ask you to think a little bit, if you found an answer to this question today, what difference would it make? So what is your most important question, and what difference would it make if you found an answer to it? Think a little bit about it and write a short message into the chat. Share it with us. Because usually what people worry about, there's so much talk and also so many questions regarding resistance, expecting resistance, how to deal with resistance. When I started doing trainings on organizational change, my customers always required me to add a session on resistance, because it's always going to be there. And I think the more you expect it, the more it's going to be there. And we had a very interesting conversation on the list recently where Cathy also asked the question, and there were some very interesting answers. And Jenny Clark posted a really cool reply, a 2-sentence reply, and she said, if you as a change facilitator notice resistance, then do something about it. Now we say, if you feel you notice resistance, then it's time for the facilitator to do something different. If the people, you recently had an executive team and say, okay, there's passive resistance. Well, there wasn't. We didn't think, my co-coach and I didn't think there was. And Jenny said, if the others diagnose it, then just ignore it. Yeah, don't do anything about it. So here I'm reading how to empower people for change within a new hybrid way of working. Yeah. How can you put the noses in the same direction so you can improve? How to empower the management to take people with them. Okay. Managing mismatched expectations. Useful conversations with leadership. How do people become empowered by the whole system? Yeah. How to bridge the gap of understanding between managers and people. Haha, very important point. Can address that in a moment. What do you already know that works in the organization? Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much for your very interesting questions that keep coming in, and we'll be looking at them. And hopefully you'll find some answers, or you'll find at least some ideas, how to deal with it. One of the most important things that we need to consider, in my opinion, as a change agent is the point of view, is the perspective that we are taking. Usually, if we're change agents, we take our own perspective, of the change doers. I encourage you that every time you are designing an intervention, or you're deciding to do something major, I mean, at every single point, maybe it's a little bit too complicated, but when you're designing interventions in the change process, I'm asking you to think of from which perspective does it look? How does it look from the other side of my counterpart? Yeah. Usually we design things from the relatively safe perspective of the change facilitator, and we don't look so much at the often not very safe perspective of the change receiver. And we have this saying, with your customer, with your CFC, your customer for change, you try to play on the same side of the net, like these two people. It's not a ping pong, or a tug of war, but you're trying to play with them, for the market, against the market forces, against whatever, and usually I try to frame it not against, but together. You play together like these two people. So what perspective are you taking? And before I do anything, I encourage my the managers I work with, and I do it myself, to also look at it from the other side. And in the next little group exercise, I encourage you to do just that, to share with each other some stories. And John will be putting you into groups of 3 for about 6 minutes. The instructions for the exercise are in the chat. And I encourage you to tell each other a story. And if you were the change facilitator, try to switch perspective. Say, those were our intentions. What might it have looked like to the people? And maybe you also get some feedback from your colleagues. And the other way around, what did you observe with the change doers? And what intentions did they presumably have? And what did it look like from your perspective? So 6 minutes in groups of 3. Whoever comes, whoever you meet are the right people, and enjoy your switch of perspective. I was hopping into a room, or I was moved into a room, and I had some interesting questions there. Thomas, I think, came up with the question of difference between change and transformation, yeah, and how come that I use the term change and not transformation. I know transformation is a lot trendier, yeah, and it denotes it denotes a deeper, a more profound change, and whereas change goes, often seems to be signaling the old school, the old style of change management, where you have a beginning and an end, and it's top down, and people say what they want different in the organization, etc. I use both terms, yeah, and but in my opinion, or in my change model, which I won't describe today, we are co-creating change with the people in the organization, and the people own the change, not just the managers. Yeah, so the whole concept is an iterative one, is one where it's vision driven. You do it in stages. Yeah, and then the second question was, who empowers the people? And that's another misunderstanding, because the people have the power already. All you can do is disempower them, and that's what we're trying to avoid. That's where what we're working as change facilitators. We should be working to stop that from happening. Yeah, and a good way, or one way of doing it, is in your own mental discipline as a change facilitator, to make that switch, to keep making that switch. And it's really good if you are affected by change as well as facilitating change for someone else. Then it's not just this thing, we are doing it to you. That's what I'm always fighting against when I work with managers or when I work with organizations. Now, in the invitation, we talked about, or the subtitle was people-centric or human-centric change. And I think the understanding that we need to have is that, obviously, we're dealing with humans who are basically, who are of goodwill. Yeah, we're not. Very often I find that managers are sort of, they don't understand, and they are blah, 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 and then they get angry with their staff members because they don't do what they want. Yeah, but humans are prone to, for example, to status quo bias. Yeah, meaning that we are all prone to status quo bias. We prefer what we have to what we might get in the future, or we value what we have more than other people would pay us for it. Yeah, like I value my metal straw really much, and I would say, okay, it's worth at least. For me, it's worth at least €5. Whereas somebody said, okay, your used metal straw, I'm not giving you anything for that. Yeah. So status quo bias is a totally human thing. Yeah. And if you want to dive into the kinds of biases, there's some really good books, 2 Nobel Prize winners, Daniel Kahneman, yeah, and Taylor and Sunstein. They explain a lot of things about that, and also how to frame nudges so that you're not forcing people, but you're inviting them to do something. So status quo bias is one. We as humans get easily overloaded. We find it really difficult to keep more than 7 things in our minds. And often I find in organizations, change strategies are very complex, and then managers get upset that people don't understand it. I've told it to them 1,000 times and still they don't understand it. It's still too complicated. Yeah, the more you allow people to participate in the development of a strategy or a business model, the more they will understand it, because they have invented it themselves. And the less you do it, the more time you need to give them to work with it, yeah, to deal with it. So once we humans get overloaded, our guts take over. Yeah, the thinking fast of Daniel Kahneman is what's taking over, and we make impulsive decisions, and they're often then driven by fear or uncertainty, and then we sort of, we're not moving anymore. No, I don't understand. I don't want that. Better not. Yeah, so that's totally human. And also, we are prey to confirmation bias. So we believe something that confirms our beliefs more than something new, more than something that is opposing to our beliefs. And that's totally human as well. And then, of course, we have overconfidence bias. Overconfidence that things will work and that we are right and that we're doing a good thing or a good job. And it's mostly change teams or change facilitators or people who invent or start the change that fall prey to this overconfidence. So I think, you can only change yourself. You can't change other people, but you can start by changing yourself. So having an attitude that values people, that is understanding for humans, and that, assumes the best intentions is really, really key. And that for me means showing up in your best possible self. Showing up as your best change doer self. And I would like to do a little exercise with you. I learned it from Chris Iveson, my dear colleague, with whom I've been experimenting with that. And it's we're going to do a very short best self coaching. And I'm asking you, if you haven't muted yourself, I'm asking you to mute yourselves now, and say the answers. Say the answers out loud. I'm going to ask you a few questions. And I would like to invite you to all say something. Give the answer out loud, even if your dog is listening or your wife is listening. Make sure you hear yourself say your answers. All right? Yeah. The best self. We've designed a little symbol for it, and you can find it in the book I wrote, co-published with Chris Iveson, the Team Talk. Some of you might know that. So on pages 29, from pages 28, you can find a little bit of a description, and most of you will know it anyway. So imagine it is Monday morning, tomorrow morning, or it is a morning when you are dealing with a change, a transformation that you're currently working on or you are engaged in. And let's imagine that you're waking up tomorrow in your best change doer self. You're aware that you have the power to do the change, not anybody else. So you're empowered both as a change receiver or as a change facilitator. What is the first thing that you notice about yourself?
Having relaxed awareness.
Now, who will be the first person who will see you? Think of a person, and a name. And what will he or she notice about you? Now, imagine you're going to your desk or you're going to your work. You might be just going to the computer. It might be actually physically going to work again. And it's your first hour at work. What will you notice about yourself in your first hour of work that tells you that you are in your best change doer self? And who is the person that you might interact with in that first hour or after that first hour? Think of a name, think of a person who's maybe really observant. What will he or she notice about you that will tell them that you are in your best change doer self? Now, suppose in the course of your workday, something adverse happens. Something that annoys you, or a person who, irritates you. What will tell you that in spite of that bit of adversity in your workday, you are still in your best change doer self? And then at the end of your workday, what will you be most pleased about as a change doer? What will you be really proud of and pleased and happy? Okay. So I hope that you got a little bit from that, and I think it's a really important exercise, because we have to begin with the empowering ourselves and the stopping to disempower other people. Yeah, it starts with us. It starts with how we show up. Yeah, and it's so important that we show up in our best self as change facilitators, because if we people notice it. Yeah, even if our attitude, people notice our attitude. And if we go into an organization or meet a team and we think, oh, they're so boring, or they're so stupid, or they're so resistant, they will notice it, and they will start being boring and stupid and resistant. Yeah? So it starts with us, the empowering. Now, what I would like to do is talk about 2 stations on the wheel, and then 2 other stations on the wheel that I feel are really important. I will probably spend a little bit more time about the firing up, yeah, and the teaming up station. Yeah, 2 points on the wheel that I feel are really important to engage people, to get them to participate, to get them to be enthusiastic about the change, or maybe as enthusiastic as you are. I always say, if I cannot believe, if I don't have the belief, if I can't be fired up or enthusiastic, if I'm not ready to team up with my CFCs or my sponsors, then I don't have a right to work with that organization. Yeah, and then when you need to keep doing these things, and you need to work with the people in the organization to help them engage in a good way. So I'd like to spend the next 9 or 10 minutes to talk a little bit, describe a little bit about what I do in my change projects, or my transformation projects, in order to do the firing up and in order to do the teaming up. Give you a few examples. And then I will ask you to share your own experiences. Yeah, what are you doing? How are you experiencing it in your organizations or in your change projects? So, what do I mean by firing up? I mean helping people get excited and enthusiastic and positive about the change process. Yeah, and one aspect of it. And I think I've posted a blog or an article on LinkedIn once about it. It's ignition. Ignition is that psychological moment or aspect when people say, this could be me. Yeah. When they see their future selves in the change, when they can imagine themselves being in that future destination. Yeah. So obviously facilitating preferred future workshops is really, really important. I won't go into that because presumably you're doing this already really, really well. What we also need to consider is that people believe colleagues more than their managers. Yeah, if a manager says, okay, this is a good direction to take and we need to be and blah, 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 then they might say, okay, should we do that so that you get a fatter bonus? What's good? What's in it for me? And if, it needs to be clear that it's also good for me, and it needs to be, people need to be able to imagine it. And very often in recent change project, we had, it's an organization, a company of consultants. It's always really hardest to consult the consultants. And, but we got a guy who was already there. He was already doing the kind of work that the company wanted to get in the future, which is not just IT technical work, but also organizational coaching. And he was talking about it in a meeting with everybody. I mean, all the meetings are online these days. So he was there and he was talking about it. So the call to action is innovators to the front. Yeah, the people who are already doing it, get them to describe it, not just the managers, so that people can identify. And identity is another trick, or it's not a trick. It's important. Yeah. In behavioral economics, when you construct nudges, you want to appeal to how people see themselves. I am a person who is creative and innovative. Appeal to that instance. I am a person who is committed to the purpose. Our purpose is sustainable finance. So what does that mean for what we do? Yeah, we are the sustainable finance people. Yeah. So pointing out the purpose, appealing to people's identity, and explaining it patiently. I have a CEO who is so good at talking one-on-ones, taking people into projects, talking about the purpose of the organization in every encounter that he makes. And last but not least, and there's thousands of practices, obviously, but one I've picked out the most important ones is simplify. Yeah, simplifying is really hard. Yeah, so make it simple, make it visual. Making it visual is one way of making it simplifying the message. I've have an organization, and the CTO, he wrote a 30-page, I think it's even 35 pages strategy paper. It's so complicated. It took me a whole weekend to understand it. And all the people in the organization, we don't understand the strategy. The board still hasn't delivered the strategy. Well, they have. They've been working on it for a year, but people haven't got it. Yeah, and now they have the idea, we're going to make posters of it. We're going to distill it to some key messages and make it interactive. Making it interactive, give people opportunities to ask questions. It's as simple as that. Yeah, have lots of dialogue formats. That's really easy to do. Yeah, you do it like we are doing it. We have maybe a plan, but then break it into groups and get people to talk to each other and talk to their managers. Making marketplaces, making large group events with posters, with Miro boards, etc., etc. Yeah? So that's on firing up. And remember, it starts with you. And the second point I wish to talk about is teaming up. Yeah, you need to team up yourself. Yeah, as a solution-focused change facilitator, you are entering into a temporary collaboration with your customer. It's not like in a systemic organizational coaching. I was always told, yeah, well, you are the observer and you are observing from the outside and you need to give some feedback, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that works. Yeah, you need to get in there and you need to team up with your teams, with your managers, with your change sponsors, with your future CFCs, customers for change. Yeah, that's really important. I think it's also important to create communities. People love to do things together, and change becomes more powerful if they see other people doing it. Yeah, and that's again one of the nudging or behavioral economics recognitions is that people like to follow the herd. Yeah, sounds awful, but they like to do what other people are doing. And if they see that, some of their colleagues are doing things in a good way, they are more likely to join forces. So very often I need to battle against the tendencies of managers to say, people have still not done this and they've still not done that and we're not there already. It's much more effective to do what we always do in solution focus and value what is in place already, what people have already achieved. Yeah, even if it's that much and they were expecting that much. Yeah, and amplify that. Yeah, because change happens all the time. Useful change also happens. So it's very sensible to put your filters, your solution focused filters, and think what's in place, what is happening. To do it and allow people to do it together. That means you need to nurture your teams. Yeah, teams at every level, the change team, the executive team, whoever you are working with. Yeah, need to nurture them to get them aligned. But then also, of course, the work teams. Yeah, usually I have had, this beyond agile consulting company, and they expect everything to work with self-organization. But they designed a strategy which they didn't invite people to participate in. And then they expected to give it to the teams or to the managers and say, implement. It doesn't work. Yeah. So you need, the more participation you have built in at the strategy level, the more you can also expect at the change process and implementation process. Yeah. So do bear that in mind and nurture the teams, help them along, give them some time. Don't leave it all to self-organization, coach them or find coaches for them. And last but not least on that point, of course, inviting participation. Yeah, I've said that already. Ideally at the early stage. Yeah. So for if you want self-organization from the beginning, it's a good idea to say, this is our vision, make an open space, invite people in it and say, so how would you go about it? Yeah. So that's a really empowering, very powerful way. I've done lots of open spaces in my time. It takes a lot of courage for the management to do that. Yeah, and it also takes a lot of engagement of management to work in the groups and then to accept the results. But if you want real empowerment, if you want real participation, then that's the way to go. And if you don't, if you're not as daring, then you need to. It's also okay to have a more defined vision or strategy for the future, but then you need to engage with the teams and help them understand it. Be prepared to also change it. Yeah, that's then also to do with the learning, and be also prepared to revise your own opinions. So that's it from my side on those two elements to get the ball rolling, yeah, or to get the wheel turning, to start it, firing up, and then teaming up people to actually do it. Yeah, and that's the first impulse of the change wheel. And I would like to ask dear John now to form some breakout groups for 10 minutes and invite you to share it could be 3 people, 4 people, whatever fits in the split, and to share some ideas about what you just heard, firing up and teaming up, and how did you do it? How, any practices that you can share with each other, learn from each other regarding these two very important points in the change process. Hope you had good conversations, very insightful conversations, I'm sure. And I would like to invite you now to type into the chat, what practices did you pick up from the last conversation, also from whatever you heard in the last few minutes, maybe from me, any practices regarding firing up and teaming up people that you might apply in the future. Yeah, so share with us. Scale energy. Now, there are 2 more topics that I consider important. Skilling up people And then speaking up. Speaking up stands for the whole practice of change communication. Okay? So I'd like to say a few things about that. I would be short, a little bit shorter than about the last 2 points, but I think they are really, really important because they often tend to get forgotten. The skilling up part tends to get forgotten because often managers assume that if they have good experts, if they have people who are good in the business, they will also be good in change management skills or in I always say, applying design thinking skills to the change process. Yeah, and that is often not a regular part of people's job. Yeah, so a little bit of skilling up often is required. And the way I like to think about it is, again, it starts with you. Yeah, I think you as a change agent, you also need to be prepared to learn, to learn what works for this organization and to learn from them. I learn an awful lot of things from my customers, always trying to adapt to the models they use, to the business strategies, to what is important in their context, etc. Yeah, so be prepared to be taught is, again, the first step. And there are two aspects. Yeah, there is the explicit teaching part, and then there is the implicit teaching part or learning part. But I always make sure that I cooperate with HR on that topic. On the topic of skilling up, on the topic of learning, on the topic of designing leadership journeys, should they be necessary. What I think is important in a change leadership journey is that you get the people to work as much as possible on their own topics. I did a leadership journey last year. It was interesting because it started in a physical space and then moved to an online space. And like 80% of the leadership journey was done online. And at first we thought, okay, this is going to kill our initiative. And in fact, it didn't. And the managers then decided to continue on their own. And I can say that about 2/3 of my change journeys have been continued in self-organization afterwards. Yeah? So if you set it up in the right way, people will take it and say, okay, this is actually useful. Yeah. So these bank managers said, yeah, we like to talk to each other about new ideas for our business, and let's continue doing that. So that's what I aim for. What I always aim for is to blend learning into the change design. Yeah, when I design the change process, I make sure that there are formats, implicit and explicitly, where people can learn. In my consulting project, with this, I have I'm currently working with an IT company with 800 people. And what we are doing is with the change group, with all the people who are engaged in this change initiative, we are doing lessons learned circles every month. Some representatives from each work group, each work stream, we are coming together and we're talking about how can we be better? How can we become better in the delivery of change artifacts or facts or initiatives? And how can we become better in the process? It's really important for myself and my co-coach. I have an internal co-coach. In fact, this is the mode of work that I prefer. Me as an external and working with somebody who's an internal co-coach. And we do this regularly, these lessons learned circles. Or what I do with, I'm working with some executives in a bank, and they are so clever, they know everything. So, but sometimes they need something. So I do a little bit of a few micro teachings. I noticed, for example, they were talking about the people agenda, and they were really lost regarding the skill landscape. What skills do they need, and how do we find this out, and how do we do this? And so I gave them a little micro teaching session, like 10 minutes, very simple. And then we did it, we put it into practice. We talked about skill maps and how to source people in this day and age. And then we designed a skill map for them. Yeah, they started with it. And then I handed it over to HR. So I tried to sneak little learning, definitely little teaching sessions, and maybe one other example I can give you, when I was working with Parliament, I specifically wanted to use the managers as facilitators. Yeah, we did a big group event with 300 people in the room. Obviously, it needed more than me as a facilitator, and we were talking about getting externals in, but that was too expensive. So I trained the managers to be facilitators. Yeah, how to ask solution-focused questions, gave them a little script, and that way, in a very practical way, they could apply it straight away. So sneak it in, yeah, if you can. If you can't do an official, or don't need to do an official program, because people learn a lot from you. Yeah, I noticed that if I work with the CEO or with somebody, recently worked with the CEO of an IT company, and every time we met, I said, so what would be a good outcome from our meeting today? Yeah, and after 3 meetings, he said, you're going to ask me, I've thought about the outcome, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, and I've actually started asking my people that. So role model, you probably do this anyway. Last point on my agenda, speaking up, change communication, another big topic. I'm not going to talk about all of that, but I think it's really, really important to empathize with your CFCs, yeah, with your customers for change, or the people who you want to be your customers for change. Yeah, customer for change is somebody who wants something different and is prepared to do something about it. So where are they? How do you find them? What questions do they have? In what stage of the decision-making process, whether to participate or not to participate are they? If you work with a big organization, I have worked successfully with the tool of personas, yeah, or empathy maps. For people, which is usually only used for customer journeys, but you can also use it for change journeys. But generally, in smaller organizations, and also in addition, you need to talk with people, yeah, and not just on the facilitator level. Yeah, I'm facilitating a meeting, like, with 40 people regularly. We have sync meetings in one change project. So every month we have we call it a sync meeting, where the work streams are talking to each other and sharing with each other what they're doing. And on top of that, or in addition, I have meetings with the groups. I have one-on-one meetings with the CEO or with the CTO, whatever it takes. Yeah, so lots of conversations. And remember, in Solution Focus, with our conversational model of OD, we believe that every conversation carries the potential for change. Yeah, so every conversation can make a difference, and it's important that you have your solution-focused questions in your pocket, ready with you. Yeah, when you meet somebody by chance, or when you having these two-way street conversations. Yeah, remember, every conversation should be a two-way street. Yeah, often managers forget that. When I coach managers on change communication, they talk at the people. Yeah, they Friday I had a meeting, and then the CEO said, okay, and then I explained the strategy to them again. And my co-coach and I said, no, don't do that. Let them explain it to you and ask you questions. Let them explain what they have understood, and then you will know where you have delivered the message or where the message has been understood, and then you can take it from there. So have questions ready. And also, when I was coaching another CEO on change communication, he went into the meeting and he said, oh, there are 200 people in this meeting now. He was doing a video conference call. There are 200 people in this meeting, so there won't be an opportunity for a useful conversation. And I thought, and then he said, oh, but we still have 10 minutes time. So what question? Are there any questions? And then when we went through the, through the conversation, I gave him the tip and said, at the beginning, ask whether there are 100 people, 50 people, 2 people, doesn't matter. Tell them that at the end, you will have the chance, or you will ask them some questions. You will ask for feedback, because it makes a difference how people listen. And it also makes you get immediate feedback, because then he said, okay, write to me on Slack and get a meeting and get a one-on-one and write me by email. That's a lot of extra communication, which is good. He can still do that, but he can also do it in the meeting. Yeah, so engage people from the start, or try to get your change masters to engage people from the start, encourage them to speak up, encourage them to say thank you for feedback, even if it is critical, especially if it is critical feedback, yeah, because we can learn from that. We need that. Yeah, we need to encourage people to give us critical feedback and tell us how we can be better. So conversations at all levels, talking with people, not at people, asking for feedback whenever you can, and engaging with people however well you can. Those are my tips. Yeah, some of my most important tips. So thank you very much from my side. Remember, you change, you fire up, you team up, you skill up. It all starts with you being your best self at work. So good luck with that. It was a real pleasure to be working with you today.
Okay, so Susanne, thank you so much for that talk today and for all of your tips. And I love the way you pull Post-it notes off your boards like that. So much more fun than PowerPoint slides. So what I'd like to do is, our traditional way of ending these sessions is just to ask people to put into the chat something that they found really good about today, about Susanne's talk. Or if you would like to, just very quickly, just come on and talk about it. So put it in the chat, talk. It's entirely your choice. We've just got a couple of minutes to do that. So please fire away. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today.